When the physical body can no longer support life, the soul is released from the body and it's drawn up to a place in the spirit world, or the afterlife, same thing, where its vibration fits perfectly. I realize that this is a very shocking concept, that reincarnation may not be the destiny of the human soul. However, I've done 40 years of research in this area, and for myself, I have to accept this as being accurate and a truthful concept.
Welcome to this new episode, and today I am here with Alan. How are you, Alan?
Fine, thank you. Very well.
Very nice. So Alan is a spiritualist in Koh Phangan, so I'm very interested in learning more about spiritualism today. First of all, Alan, can you tell us a little bit more about your journey in life?
I was born in Chicago, Illinois, in America. And when I was about 20 years old, I would say that would be 1965, I began my awakening, so to speak. And 4 years later, I moved to Los Angeles, California. And a year after that, I began to study yoga and practice meditation and follow all the Eastern traditions and the practices. Also, at the same time, I studied philosophy, and both Eastern and Western, to a considerable extent. I followed the Eastern path. I had seen Ram Dass. I had gone to many lectures. I had read everything that was available at the time. I experimented with some substances as well. I saw many of the Eastern masters who were at the time in Los Angeles, who had ashrams throughout the city. And I completely immersed myself in spirituality or in the quest for spirituality, and became a vegetarian and did all the practices. Well, after about 10 years of this, I had made some spiritual progress. However, that I did not find the answers that I needed to make sense of my life and to make sense of the world. And it was about 1982 or so, that I had what I can describe as a spiritual breakdown, whereby I just surrendered. I had no place else to look for what I was searching for. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I knew that if I could find it, if it existed, that it would make sense to me and would help me to understand my existence, why I'm here, and the meaning of my life. And so I just surrendered because I had no place else to look, and I went through a period of time of healing. And it was then that I started to experience supernatural things that I had no idea even existed, and which eventually led me to a small group. And now I was living up in Central California in a city called Santa Cruz, near on the Monterey Bay. And this is a very spiritual community, indeed. And I was guided to a very small group of spiritualists who lived there. And I was attracted to go to their Wednesday evening healing. And this was my introduction to spiritualism.
This is very fascinating because it seems like as a younger man, you dedicated yourself completely to seeking the truth, or seeking, you said, the meaning of life, which is quite extraordinary. So you had this kind of yearning from very early on. Do you come from like a family of highly spiritual people, or how did you develop this desire for learning?
Well, it was when I was in Chicago, and I was about, what was I, about 20 something. All of my friends were either married or engaged to be married, and they were going to look forward to a wife, a couple children, a house, 2 cars, a mortgage, and the normal life, the normal American life. And something told me that there's got to be more to life than that for me, and that's when I left for California in 1969. And in 1970 is when I began my spiritual search in earnest with the yoga and the meditation. Here I am, 1970.
Wow, what a haircut!
Here I am, 1970, and I am, you could say that I was a hippie and a bona fide seeker for truth. And I can remember when my mother came out to visit from Chicago, she said to me, "Alan, you look terrible." And I thought, well, she's probably right to a certain extent in her eyes.
That's fascinating indeed. Yeah. So basically, you were there during this extraordinary time in history where younger people were sort of rebelling against the culture of the time, the stifling culture of the 50s and the 60s, and they wanted freedom and experimentation and connection.
Absolutely. I went through the whole thing. As I said, my awakening began in 1965. I was even at in Chicago at the Hilton Hotel. There was this major it was a riot, actually, that took place. This was a long time ago, but it was in protest of the Vietnam War.
Sure.
And it was, I remember Mayor Daley of Chicago and the police. I actually was chased by the police and had to run because I wanted to be down there to kind of make my voice heard that I was against this terrible war. So I was very much involved in these times, and I also had, especially when I got to California, that I started to go to a lot of music events, and I'd seen like Bob Marley and the Rolling Stones and all the bands that would come there to perform, and I really enjoyed that very much. So I lived through this early love period and the psychedelic period and so on and so forth.
And then you said that you had a bit of a spiritual breakdown where you kind of like stopped seeking, and the actual, stopping the seeking process was beneficial to you because you went through a healing process,
Right.
And then you came out like feeling different. Is that right? Or?
Well, I knew that there was more than this world from these experiences. And then I was guided to this small group of spiritualists where I was living in Santa Cruz at the time. And when I became involved with this group, things accelerated. The paranormal, the supernatural accelerated until it culminated with experiences that were life-altering.
Mm-hmm.
And I was introduced through their channeled material that they had to what was known as spiritualism.
Yeah.
Now, at the time, I had never heard the word. I didn't know what it was. And so I had to research it. And I discovered that it was a very large movement that had begun in Western New York State in America in 1848, but was actually completely vanquished by the very famous Harry Houdini, who had run a campaign against fraudulent mediums.
Uh-huh.
So the whole movement seemed to disappear except in Britain, where it actually had flourished because it didn't have an antagonist like Harry Houdini.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the philosophy, which was the phenomenon, You know, I experienced supernatural things connected with spiritualism. And it showed me that there was another world, another dimension, and that when our bodies can no longer support life, we go there. And that I spent years. Well, what I did was actually at this point is I sold all of my possessions, and I set out to study, to learn about religion and spiritualism. And I went to Jerusalem. I lived in Jerusalem, and I went through Europe, and I spent a lot of time in Britain, which turns out to be the world's hub of the spiritualist movement at this particular time, even though it began in America. Spiritualism basically is the study and the documentation of the afterlife, is what it is.
Wow, this is really fascinating. You know, it's I never really heard of it. You know, because I've been also seeking, you know, the different answers, and I've been on a spiritual journey for a while. But spiritualism is really something else. So basically, it's the study of the afterlife.
Right. Okay.
Wow. And can you tell us, so according to the spiritualist sort of philosophy or knowledge, what happens when we leave our bodies?
Okay. All right. I'll begin that now. Okay. According to spiritualist philosophy, there's two universes. There's the physical universe that we're all familiar with, and there's an etheric or spiritual universe that's invisible to us. And the spiritual universe is comprised of 7 numbered regions, or they're known as spheres. They're called spheres because they encompass the Earth, which is the globe, and the spheres go all the way around. And there's 7 in number, and that, you've heard the expression seventh heaven?
Ah, yeah.
Well, that's where it comes from, because there's 7 numbered spheres, and the highest one truly is a heaven. Now, how the law of karma functions according to spiritualist philosophy is this. During the course of our earthly life, each person, by their thoughts and their deeds and their actions, is creating what's known as a soul condition. And this soul condition has an accompanying vibration. Now, the spheres of the afterlife each have a higher vibration the further the sphere is from the earth plane. Mm-hmm. So you see the colors are to try to indicate a higher vibration. So now what happens is, when the physical body can no longer support life, the soul is released from the body, and it's drawn up to a place in the spirit world, or the afterlife, same thing, where its vibration fits perfectly. The person will go to the level or the place where it belongs, that it has created for itself by its actions on earth, thus creating the vibration for it to fit in perfectly in that particular level or sphere. Now, from that point, initially when the person arrives to the afterlife, because most people are completely ill-prepared to survive physical death with their full faculties, there's a period of adjustment required for them to understand what has happened to them.
Like a purgatory. Huh? Like a purgatory.
Well, it's not a bad place. It's actually a very nice place. It's a very nice place. It's kind of it's a welcoming station. It's a greeting place, and it's in a lower portion of the second sphere. So here, this is the earth. I don't know the chart. Yeah. This is the earth. This is the first sphere of darkness. This is the second sphere. This is the tunnel that is described in all the NDE experiences. Mm-hmm. And the welcoming place is in the second sphere. And this welcoming place is where the person, the new spirit, will go to initially, and their friends and relatives who are living in all, regardless of where they're living above, will come to this welcoming place and welcome the new spirit to their new home and their new existence. And what they will do is they will try to help them to understand what has just happened. Because, say for instance, that if it was a sudden accident on the road in a motorbike, well, 1 minute you're on the road and the next minute you're here. Now, one of the mechanisms that's used to help the new spirit to realize that they've left the earth forever is they will be escorted to their funeral to get a better view of what kind of person they were to the people who were that they loved and who cared about them. And this can cause an awakening to have this understanding, and it can actually lead to a self-examination and potentially to a self-realization. So it's very beneficial to come and see this.
And then they gradually move through the spheres to the top one.
Right. So then, after the orientation at the welcoming station, and the new spirit is convinced that they're about to embark in a new existence, then they will be escorted to the home that they have prepared for them, for themselves, in the sphere that they fit in according to their vibration. Now, once they reach their home, and they do have houses, and they have gardens, and they have, there's water and rivers and plants and trees and flowers. I mean, there's a kind of a copy of the earth up there that looks very similar in the second sphere. So once they reach their home, they have 3 choices from that point. And number 1, they can stay in the place where they have arrived for as long as they like. Number 2, they can try to return to the earth and reincarnate by coming down to the earth plane, searching for a pregnant woman, invading her womb, and trying to attach to her fetus to be born again into the flesh. However, the problem with it, and number 3, is that they can ask for help and guidance and healing, and they can be made whole, and they can progress up to higher realms, better quality of life, more beautiful surroundings, and better companions, and more privileges.
Wow. I mean, I'm Italian, and I went to a classical school in Italy, so I studied the Divine Comedy. I don't know if you're familiar with the Divine Comedy.
No.
So this is Dante's masterpiece, and it's a description of infernos or hell, purgatory and paradise. And also it's a very complex story with different layers and different sort of levels, starting from the hell and then going all the way up to paradise where God lives, and this reminds me a little bit of the Divine Comedy, actually,
Yeah.
Alan, you mentioned reincarnation. This is also consistent with Eastern religions, particularly Buddhism and Hinduism.
Of course.
Can you tell us the view of reincarnation in spiritualism, please?
Yes, I would be glad to. At the first incarnation, the soul attaches to the fetus via what's known in Hinduism as the etheric cord. This cord serves a similar function of the soul attaching to the central nervous system of the physical body as the umbilical cord serves as attaching from the mother to the infant. Now, we know that this takes place, that there is such a thing as this etheric, or a magnetic cord or silver cord as it's known. We know this takes place because the research that's been done on NDEs, near-death experiences, has proven that a person can soul travel out of their body and return to their body because their cord is not severed. However, at physical death, where the body can no longer support life, the cord is severed permanently. Now, the problem with reincarnation is that when once a soul has been released from the body, it manifests what's known as a spirit body. It's a body of energy that takes on the appearance of the person to make that person recognizable to family and friends in the afterlife. And we know this to be the case because in spiritualism, there are mediums who not only can give accurate descriptions of departed loved ones, but there's actually mediums who can draw pictures of the departed loved ones. And this particular one was a picture drawn by a famous British medium named Coral Poge, who has drawn this soldier who had passed to the afterlife, and here's her drawing of it. And when this is done in these demonstrations it's called psychic art. In these demonstrations, the picture is given to the person in the audience that the spirit belongs to as a memento of the event of coming to the meeting and as a remembrance of the loved one. I realize that this is a very shocking concept, that reincarnation may not be the destiny of the human soul. However, I've done 40 years of research in this area, and for myself, I have to accept this as being accurate and a truthful concept.
Alan, what you're saying is very esoteric and even slightly incredible to some people, although I have to say that some of the concepts that you mentioned are very consistent with other concepts in established institutionalized religions, particularly Eastern philosophies and religions, right? So when you talk about spiritualism and your journey and your knowledge around the spiritualism philosophy, the spiritualist philosophy, do you get lots of like setback and people questioning it? I mean, how is it?
Well, yes. I've given over 50 or 60 presentations and workshops on spiritualism in 3 continents. And yes, of course, because these concepts are new and different, that of course there's resistance. And I would have to say that the greatest resistance of any particular spiritualist concept is the one of reincarnation, because people are very, very much attached to it.
Alan, I mean, there are many places in the world where you could live, and you chose to be based in Koh Phangan at the moment.
Yes.
What do you like so much about the island?
I've been living in Thailand for 10 years, and the cost of living is very, very attractive to me because I don't have any concerns. I don't have any financial concerns because the cost of living here is very affordable. And of all the places that I've been in the world, and I've been to the Caribbean, and I've lived in Hawaii, and I've been here and I've been there, I find that the islands in the Gulf of Thailand have the absolute best climate of any place that I've ever lived. And you know, I've lived in California and Florida and Hawaii, and I find that the weather here suits me the best of anywhere. Also, I have to say that the west side of the island has a concentrated, higher consciousness of people than most anywhere else that I've been. So I've made the decision that I intend to remain on this island for the rest of my days. I have a Thai friend who I've made arrangements with to take my body to the temple for cremation. And this is my last earthly home.
Wow, what you're saying is very touching, you know. Seems that, of course, because of your spiritualist philosophy and knowledge about the afterlife, it seems like you've been also preparing for passing.
Every day. I prepare every day, and I like to share one of the methods of preparation, and that is the expunging of regrets. People tend to go over to the other side carrying regrets. I can give you an example of one that I experienced at a meeting in England where there was a young man there, and the medium said to the young man, "I have your father here, and he wants you to know that he regrets not being able to show you the affection and being able to tell you that he loved you when he was on the earth. But now that he's on the other side of life, he wants me to tell you that he loves you very much." So I constantly am working to eliminate my past regrets and not to produce any new regrets by being a better person every day, being kinder, more generous, more considerate, more thoughtful, so that when I go to the other side, that I will be able to go free and liberated.
Wow, this is a very good way of finishing this interview. You know, it's a very good thought. You know, just because it's not just about the passing and the afterlife, but it's also about today in this life, eliminating regrets and being a better person today, right? Well, Alan, thank you very much. It's been really fascinating getting to know you a little bit more. So thank you very much for sharing your time with me.
Well, thank you so much for having me.